There's been consternation over the Department of Sports, Arts and Culture's announcement that they intend to spend 22 million rand on a statue that would literally be a national flag. So this follows on the heels of a court interdict by AfriForum against the Department of International Relations and Cooperation, that's DIRCO, when the court stopped that department from spending a 50 million rand worth of donation to Cuba. Now, questions have been raised regarding what the country's key priorities should be, given the fiscal constraints that have been there, but of course exacerbated by recent occurrences such as the COVID-19 pandemic. And we also saw the 2021 July uprisings, which cost an estimated 50 billion rand to the economy. And most recently, we saw the devastation that was visited upon KZN again by the floods. Now, all of these have placed South Africa's already ailing economy in a very precarious position financially. African futurist Mahapeko is in studio with us to share her perspectives on some of these. What an absolute pleasure to have you with us in studio. Welcome.
It's lovely to be back here. Thank you.
So, Ms. Peko, just starting by looking at, for example, this national monument, the flag project that is being well, it's already started because some money has already been spent, I think to the tune of 5 million, which is additional information that the Department of Sports, Arts and Culture has made available. But people are questioning this, especially because South Africans are really struggling at the moment. People are worried. They're concerned about a possibility of another massive fuel increase. And they're saying, how do we then justify spending 22 million rand on a flag project?
I think that South Africans are correct and right to be absolutely outraged by this kind of spending. But before we even go there, I think that we need to look at the nature of the state and what the state is. We are seeing a state now that has many different personalities. At one level, it's fragile. At another level, it's weak. At another level, it's powerful. At another level, it is just not delivering on any services at all. But it is powerful, for example, when it comes to funding and bailing out South African Airways, etc., to the tune of 10.5 billion. But weak and fragile when it comes to development, policing, housing, water, etc. And so in light of COVID and in light of the mismanagement of the state and in light of state capture itself, it seems like there is a roller coaster of political and economic collapse in the country. In a sense, we have a state that is able to manage and find funding for its elite projects. And this 22 million rand is a case in point, in that this is money that could be spent to beef up other areas of the country. Now, when you have a state that is sort of schizophrenic in the way in which it plans or does not plan, this is the outcome of what happens to us. We have a state that has poor planning. When there are projects, they are overrun in terms of its budget. And there's no link or inclusivity in terms of what benefit will this particular project deliver to the people of South Africa. There is no consultation as well in terms of why should we have this? What does it symbolize for us? What does it celebrate for us as a country? So we see a weakening state in a sense that is trying to retain and prop up its power. And you will find these legacy sort of projects, vanity projects, so to speak, where people want to say that I was there. And it has nothing to do with the development agenda of this country. We have to stand up in protest as a people, because often we forget that the monies that are being spent are our monies. This is not government money, it's not ANC money, it's our money. And so we have to ask for accountability, but accountability in such a way that we are able to connect people to what is going on. I think sometimes we stand aside, we say, oh, look, they're spending this money, but we have to connect it to why was 10.5 billion given to bail out SAA, and why were so many, 41 departments defunded, essentially. We're not moving around money, we are actually defunding the police, we are defunding higher education, we are defunding basic education, we are defunding healthcare in a COVID crisis. So we are defunding on one level, but we are funding the projects that will maintain the elite enclave that this country has now decided is a priority.
And that is the problem, isn't it? Talking about vanity projects, when people are literally going hungry, when people are sending us, bombarding us with questions about access through a 350 social relief of distress grant that they are struggling to access.
Exactly.
But you make the point of the state being weak on developmental spending, but we are a developmental state, aren't we? So the irony in that.
The dichotomy, I almost come to tears, you know, when I see what's happening in our country. The fact that it's okay and we have normalized this kind of spending, where we spend for these elite projects, where we can spend 3.5 billion in COVID projects with people who don't even have businesses. We are normalizing those sorts of things. On the other hand, we have floods in KZN right now. We have people who don't have homes. We have people who don't have water. And it is not just because of the floods. It is because we have a careless state at the same time that has not actually maintained any of this infrastructure, has not maintained a housing project that enables people to live with dignity. So on one hand, we have a state that is careless when it comes to the people of South Africa, careless when it comes to development, acts on a pretense that it is a developmental state. It is not. And I think that we see now the cases in point and the evidence that is building every day that when it talks as a developmental state, but acts anti-development.
And then, of course, you mentioned the point of the floods in KZN, in the Eastern Cape, parts of the Northwest Province that have also suffered devastation. The money, and people have asked this question, how is it that when COVID-19 happened, we were able to find the money? Yet, when it comes to other necessary projects like infrastructure development, like, you know, making sure that people have a proper homes to live in, proper roads to drive on, simple things, water to drink, which, by the way, is an inalienable human right. But that's a story for another day. Just making sure that these basics are in place. We're always talking about not being able to find the money. We don't have the money. Children have to wait. If you look at school infrastructure development, for more than 28 years now, we've been waiting for schools to be brought up to a certain standard. There are still people in this country who use bucket toilets. So how is it that we can find money for certain things and not for others?
As I said, it's a schizophrenic state. At one level, it acts as a very weak and fragile state when it needs to. At another level, it acts as a very powerful state that needs to retain power and will choose and pick where the money goes. And at the same time act as a developmental state. It's very schizophrenic. The planning is poor. We see the lack of coordination across departments in this country, across departments, right down to local level. And it seems as if there is no common vision, even in one government, in terms of what is the outlook for South Africa? What should we be doing? What is our telescope where we can see what the end result is going to look like? So we are moving from economic to political crisis, a state of continuous, a pathology almost of collapse. And this is the most dangerous. I think we're in one of the most dangerous periods in this country. We need to raise the level of debate, level of understanding as well, in terms of what is happening to us as a people. We need to intervene in terms of discussing what kind of alternative governments do we want? How do we want to be governed as a people? These are important conversations that we need to come up with. They shouldn't be polemic conversations. They should be strategic conversations that give us scenarios, different scenarios about what we can do for different parts of this country. Your demographic is also changing, with your youth unemployment escalating. What is our vision for the youth of this country? What can they look forward to? And I think there are more and more questions, but I think what we need to do now is to really plan out, demand a plan for this country in terms of where we are going.
Who are we going to demand the plan from?
We have
and how are we going to demand that plan?
We must demand that plan from ourselves, first of all, and come up with our own list of things and demands that we want as a country. There are many ways in which countries can reorganize themselves, and I think that politically we need to reorganize ourselves. We need to restructure our economy. We need to socially transform our nation. So I think we ourselves have to rise up now, and in small pockets initially, begin to discuss what is the future that we want as a nation. What is the future that we want? I think we are so enveloped into looking at crisis, because we've been living in crisis for so long, that it's almost difficult sometimes to step outside of that crisis and look at ourselves and imagine ourselves as a different country, a new political imaginary that we really need to have. And I think these are the kinds of conversations that the intellectuals need to have, the people living on the margins need to have. And it's not that the people don't know what they want. South Africans know exactly what they want. They know the future that they desire. They've been waiting expectantly for it, and unfortunately it has been underdeveloped.
Would it be fair to say, though, that the South African public itself is somewhat paralyzed by what is going on around it? Because in as much as South Africans express their outrage very vocally on social media platforms, for example, through protests that we see happening daily, beyond that point, we seem not to know what to do or where to go.
I think that we do know where to go. I do think that we do know where to go. I think that one of the strengths of this country is our ability to plan, to put down policies, to put down all these brilliant, this brilliant outlook of what we want as a country. But we've never delivered on any of these things. We know the policy direction has gone in the wrong direction, but we know exactly what policies need to be in place. We need critical mass. We need a critical mass that has common thought, that can be mobilized to make these demands. Leaders will emerge out of that.
Where does that critical mass start in this work? Because very often, and this is how it plays out. Take, for example, the current consternation around this monumental flag project. Government says, essentially, you guys are dunces. You don't know what you're talking about because the money is there to be spent. So we can spend that money on this project because it is there. And very often, that's the sort of pushback that sometimes pushes people into silence, whereas they have every right to critically question what government is doing.
You bring up a very important point in that with state capture, with COVID and the mismanagement of the state, what we have seen is the centralization, and almost a secretive government. The SAA, a point in case. I mean, the SOEs in general, a point in case. What's happening? Why is it happening? Who's behind what is happening? And what is the intent of weakening all these state-owned enterprises? So the centralization of the state itself is a huge problem for us. It's murky because it is not all cabinet that is also involved. It's a cabal within cabinet itself that makes the decision somewhere in the corners, and nobody else is privy to the information that comes out of those meetings in dark corners. So the centralization of the state and the way in which COVID itself has regulated us, into silence, is something that is really pernicious, and we must really look carefully at. The impact that COVID has on silencing society, silencing voices, silencing dissent, really means that we must build up a massive dissent in this country. Speak with one voice in terms of opening up the space for within this centralized government. We have to open up that space. We have to demand answers for the questions that we need answers to around the economy, around the politics of the country, around the management of our resources. This is very critical. This centralization is probably one of the most dangerous things that has happened, and has been probably reinforced through these COVID regulations as well, which continue now with the new health regulations that are going to make certain powers for the state to essentially nanny us in a very dangerous way. And the new security rules and laws as well. When you combine all of this, this leads to authoritarianism and autocratic states. This is how autocratic states begin. So we have to have very open, very bold conversations around the nature of the state, the type of state that we want, and demand, blow open this centralization of decision-making in our state.
And I'm hoping that this is the beginning of those types of conversations. Yeah. Well, we have to leave it there for today. African futurist Ms. Mahal Peko pondering on what should be South Africa's economic priorities amid the economic challenges faced by the country and its citizens, and how do we move forward from this point.